Oh, very, very well.
Solid.
And welcome to the Pro
Smooth.
Show Live.
Oh,
I'm Skillbo One. We have a
Oh my
special
God.
guest, Brandon Russ, with us tonight. What's going on, everybody?
What's going on, guys? How's everybody doing?
Excellent, man. Thank you for joining us, Brandon. We're really, really excited to have you on. Brandon, we've known for a long, long time, well before he had his company and his all of the stuff he's done in the last couple of years. So we're interested in talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. For all your listeners who don't know who I am, they can find a lot of what I do on Instagram at russ.brandon. And you can also find, my company, Bokashi Earthworks, at www.bokashiearthworks.com.
Excellent, excellent.
and he's
We were
one of those accounts that actually answers the DMs. Well, at least he answers mine.
I try to make sure if anybody has questions and stuff that I'm there to help get them, through their grow successfully. I've helped out so many people, and it's really rewarding um, to see people flourish and be able to have their own medicine and be able to be a little more self-sufficient.
I mean, how often does that happen, Brandon? You got a lot of followers and you got a lot of very unique, like to the point, content. And going through your Instagram feed, man, I got a lot of questions. It's like, it's so helpful. But as a new grower, I'd be like, holy shit, like, like your rant on phosphorus, your rant on amino acids, that kind of stuff. Like that's such beautiful information for you to share with the community. And I appreciate it even as someone that's been growing for basically a decade now, I can still learn. It's awesome. But, I mean, how often are you getting hit up for messages, man? It's got to be 100 times a day.
I hit it pretty frequently. It's not as much as you think, though. I mean, and a lot of times it's people that are asking questions about the products, the microbe products, things like crop covers. And I also get a lot of questions about the agronomic data that I collect, because that's like the secret sauce right there. It's not really, it's just doing things how, other, ag industries do things, and it's using agronomic data to make sure that they have exactly what they need. And then
Brandon, what's that mean?
Okay, so let's take cotton or soy or corn, all of those crops that are grown at really large scale. They'll use an agronomist and they'll test the soil and they'll see exactly what they need to add, because they have the data on, how much nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, iron, all your micronutrients that corn needs to get through an entire cycle, right? They have, values of how much protein of the content will be in that corn using certain values. And so they strive to consistently hit those target values, and they can use the agronomic data like tissue testing to see how much of what they're applying into the soil is actually being accumulated into the plant. And that's what they do in conventional agriculture. And I've just applied those same systems to the organic side, where you're looking at it from a nutritional perspective and from a balance perspective, making sure you have everything that you need in the amount you need for cannabis specifically, and then being able to maintain those sufficiencies using things like different minerals, like gypsum, for instance, for your calcium. Or if you need to maintain and adjust pH, you can use something like wollastonite, which is calcium silica. So you can use like different rock minerals and things like that are available to the plant right away. They don't have to be broken down by biology, with the exception of some of them like phosphorus minerals. But it works so that way you are always, the plant always has exactly what it needs when it needs it, and it's meeting those levels. And you can test to see if those levels that you're maintaining in soil are making it into the tissue. You can see the percentages of nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, all your nutrients in your leaf tissue. And then you can even go further with cannabis, and they have what's called SAP analysis. SAP analysis allows you to preemptively act because it takes fully photosynthetic bottom leaves and fully photosynthetic top leaves from a plant, and it shows you and it gives you a map of what's being translocated. Any mobile nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, magnesium, they can be pulled from the lower parts of the plant. And so the SAP will actually show you when it starts to do that before the plant actually shows a symptom. So you can always preemptively act without having to guess when something appears. So the thing is, you're never really going under a 10% deficiency if you're able to use these types of data analytics, and so you can maintain those.
How often are you able to use these analytics, Brandon? Are you able to use them like on a table per table? Like, how hard is it to do it? You do like table per table, or row by row, or even plant by plant?
So for soil, if you're, let's say, running a room and you're in pots, like some of the people I work with, what I'll have them do is I'll have them take random sampling from a certain percentage of that whole room. So they'll go around and random sample, they'll homogenize that soil mix together, and then that will be room one for sampling. Now, if you're in a greenhouse and you're in a 100-foot bed, I say, okay, what you need to do is you need to take multiple sample sites from each bed if you're just going to test that bed, and you have one variety in that bed and you want to maximize that. Let's say you're running MAC 1, right? And you want to know, and you know that your farm is going to be running MAC 1 for the next year, and you want to have the agronomic data. You maintain those target levels that are sufficient pretty much across the board for cannabis, and then you use the tissue analysis and the SAP sampling to see how the plant is uptaking, and also how it's translocating nutrients around, because with that data you can maximize the genetic potential based off of its nutrition, right? So you know that like I had a variety that's called Death Breath. It was Limarilla times Purple Kush cross, and it had a higher demand for phosphorus but a lower demand for nitrogen. And so I could see that because the same target levels across the board, when I did SAP analysis, the nitrogen, and tissue analysis, the nitrogen percentage, and then what I saw on the SAP was higher than the target would be, right? So I knew that if those levels in soil were kept at that same place for, that I can lower those. And so I can actually maximize my efficiency for my cost for nutrition as well, because I'm only adding the amount that I actually need for that specific variety.
Well, Brandon, go ahead.
You are, I feel like in the 10 minutes that we've started this podcast, I've already had a full podcast blown into my head by what you're telling me right now. And even agronomics, I've never even thought about it that way. I'm all about the business of this plant, but basically you're talking about the economics of agriculture, right? In a kind of short form way, right? In terms of the nutrients, right? And the uptake of the plant, depending on the plant, all those things. I just started growing in the last 6 months indoors organically. It's a brand new thing to me. I've done it outdoors for several years, but for the last about 7 years, I've been growing in cocoa. So I'm very excited to have you on to talk about organics, especially growing indoors. But, and I'm sorry to do this now, 12 minutes in. I wish I would have done this 1 minute.
I knew you're going to do it.
I need to know what your background is. I want to know who you are, Brandon Russ Brandon. I need to know what kind of style you're growing in now. I need to know your background. I've looked through your Instagram. It's blown me away. But a lot of people watching this show right now today are just so confused by what you're saying. So I need you to give me some background. Why organic? Why are we even talking organics right now?
Yeah. So Bob, let me first off start by saying that organic is actually just a marketing terminology. And I'll get into that a little bit later, because I'll talk about what the plant can actually utilize. My background is I grew up in foster care, and I was heavily medicated as a child. I found cannabis, and that changed my perspective. I talked about this on Cheap Home Grow just on the last podcast. It made me want to grow. When I was 15 years old, I remember being in high school saying, hey, I was reading High Times magazine. I was like, I'm going to grow hydroponics. Interestingly enough, my father, who's serving a life sentence, I got a hold of him when I turned 18. He was like, look, you need to go meet a bunch of my younger homies back down in El Cajon where he used to live. And you just go meet these people. And so that's what I did. You know, I was already at that time slinging Mexican brickweed to out-of-staters and shit. And so I went down there, met up with some guys, and they put me to work basically. And it wasn't involved in cannabis or anything like that. It was really just me doing yard work for them, washing little hydroton rocks and stuff. But I knew that they were growers. Eventually, they blindfolded me, put me into the back of the truck, and took me to a grow. And they were running multiple houses. This was back in like 2001 or late 2001 or early 2002. And I started working with these guys. We were running multiple houses. They showed me how to run hydroponic systems, and I worked with those guys for 2 years. I did it myself with my own partners, running, and I did a hydroponics for 11 years.
Real quick, you said you were blindfolded the first time you went there.
Oh yeah, man. This was
how long did that go on for? You said you worked for them for 2 years. How long were they like blindfolding you?
It was really just the first couple of times that I went over to this one specific house, and it was really because the person that I can't say. There's some things that I probably shouldn't say because like the owner of that house, you know,
For sure.
You know, like it was fucking all clandestine shit back then, dude. Like no fucking joke. You didn't fucking talk about that shit. You didn't do anything. And look, I did a prison term in 2006, all of so part of 2006, all of 2007, and some of 2008, right? And I got busted with like 256 plants, a big indoor op. And then, you know, I did my time, but I got out, did that shit. I did another term back in what was it? It was like 2017, I think, 17 and 18, for making hash. So, I mean, I've just been doing this shit for a long time. But how I got into organics, it was really because it came to a point in about 2014. The price of cannabis started to drop, and I needed to figure out how to decrease my overhead. And I was like, man, I was running Fox Ocean Forest. I was amending it with like some perlite.
Outdoors or indoors, and what kind of lights?
Indoors. I was running
HIDs probably at the time.
I was running HIDs, but at this particular time, I had just switched over to CMH.
Oh, okay, nice.
Running 315 CMH, and
you were really ahead of your time on that one.
Yeah, I had a friend because I was on Probiotic Farmers Alliance, and I had a friend that I was talking to out in Thailand, and they were like all into the lighting thing. And then someone out here switched over, and then we got in on it. And it was great. It was such an awesome switch because of the cost efficiency, and then the quality of the flower was a lot better. But we were checkerboarding HPS and metal halides in our flower rooms when I first started. That's what they showed me. So we had those checkerboarded. So the spectrum was more complete on the stuff that we were running back then.
I like it.
One of the things is though, we, you know, I was at this point and I needed to decrease, you know, my overhead, and I was using the house and garden nutrients, and it was like 11 different fucking things. I was like a little bit of this, and all that shit was hella expensive. And so I was like, what is this shit? And I actually, instead of just following fucking recipes like I had been doing for a really long time, I was like, you know, I went from throwing out my soil every run and dumping a bunch of shit in, just waste and waste after waste. I had to be creative with building garden beds and trying to figure out what to do with all my soil, you know, because I was
Jenga towers of 11 different kinds of plastic bottles.
Yeah, you know, and so what I ended up doing was I was looking at, I started reading the labels, and I was like, something said derived from like langbonite. I was like, what's langbonite? Okay, well, I found out what that was, and I found out you could buy 50 pounds of it for like $35. It's like, well, why the fuck does this bottle cost $40 for a liter? Like this
Water
is
weight.
you know what I mean? And it's and it's all
Dude,
water.
man.
So what I started to do was just do my research. I had to relearn everything. I switched over to organic on a challenge because my mentor, who created the Afghani Bull Rider, he was like, I'm going to switch all over to organics. And he was just joking. And I took it as a challenge. I switched over. My first crop sucked. And I was like, I have to figure this out because, I needed to figure it out. I did that Subcool recipes. I did some probiotic stuff. And I kind of figured out recipes that worked. But it wasn't until like my last time that I was in prison, I was like, look, I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, I can't grow weed anymore, this and that. I was thinking, I have to figure out a way to fucking make this work. And I was like, I've been studying like the occult, ancient civilizations, history, metaphysics, all these things since I was, probably 12 or 13. And I was like, I need to start like actually putting all the stuff that I know into play, in action. And so I just started manifesting everything. I was like, this is what I do. I made a plan. I wrote it out over and over and over.
I was going to ask, did you create like an SOP? You know what I mean? What's today's terminology?
Intention, man.
And I was like, this is how this is going to work. I'm going to do it like this. And as soon as I started making opportunities for myself, right? Instead of waiting for things to happen, I'd load up my backpack with jars of flour and go hit a fucking cannabis convention where there were companies looking for people to fucking grow up, all that shit. And I ended up having an opportunity that came out of Palm Springs, and I ended up in Oklahoma, right? And I told these people, I came out here because I've been helping people grow weed for fucking years, right? And so I walk into a place and I can say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. And these people had an emergency situation. They're like, we need you to come out here. We'll fly you out, check this shit out, tell us what you think. And I was like, I came back
to Oklahoma or somewhere else.
Yeah, I was because I'm from San Diego, so I flew out here to Oklahoma, and I was like, okay, well, this is what I need to do, and this is what you guys need to do. This is, how much I want to do it. And I started a relationship with a company, and I just kept working. I put all of the things that I was already doing, like Bokashi Earthworks, created a corporation. I created a consulting company. I just put
Brandon, I can remember when we were first doing the cheap home grow in the very beginning, and you were in your living room mixing fucking soil and shit. Remember? Just fucking mixing during the whole show, just talking. Like, I can remember when you were in San Diego before you went to Oklahoma, before Oklahoma blew up and became what it was. You know what I mean? It's been a fucking great ride watching your Instagram, man.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
Living
it was all about
vicariously.
just making this plan and implementing all the parts that needed. And dude, it's fucking crazy because I got hooked up with Dr. George Caltias. If you've seen my videos, he owns NASA Agritech, and he was the engineer on the Apollo space project. So his background in both engineering, chemistry, and all the other things that he does. The guy has like 5 PhDs. He's brilliant. And he created this, this company, NASA Agritech, and he's, used state-of-the-art technology and the understanding of these really high-level sciences and engineering, chemical engineering, to create this carbon-based fertilizer that I have an opportunity for, to distribute. But I'm also, working with them on some other things, and we're going to be putting together some business plans to do some just ridiculously large things.
Before we get too far into the future of what your future products are, I want to hear about specifically Growkashi. But before you explain that to us,
tell me about
from California to the new Oklahoma, this new paradise of licenses distributed to everyone. What's next? I mean, do you have any plans from here? And then I want to hear about Growkashi.
Yeah. So Oklahoma's great. I consult also with the largest farm in the state of Hawaii, and they have exponentially grown, and they're all a grassroots movement. They've gotten involved with the American Civil Liberties Union. They also work with some of the state senators now, where state senators are coming to the farm, where people with badges used to show
I'm
up.
so conflicted on Hawaii. Can you give me a little insight into that? Because I was just recently there a few weeks ago, and I got the opportunity to talk to a few people about it.
Yeah,
and,
it's
the locals are
weird.
kind of even back and forth on it too. It's like, yeah, we have this beautiful sunshine. We have basically unlimited amounts of water. We've got a great climate year round for this.
Dude.
But
It's
it's
weird.
like, do we really want to allow this to take over our state? It's another thing, it's another economics of
kind of
something.
limited.
Well, here's the problem.
Right?
Here's the problem,
Not
right?
with water and light, though.
there's two different sides of Hawaii, right? Hawaii is beautiful, and the people that are from Hawaii, they have this type of spirit and element about them, right? They're most really, really kind, genuine people. They want what's best for the land and best for the people. It's very community oriented. That's that aloha vibe, right? However, because it also is a military state, it has this weird political thing going on, like not being able to eat inside of a restaurant without a vaccination card. Those types of situations which can make it difficult, but you can also understand where it's coming from, because Hawaii is based, mostly the income and revenue is coming from tourism, right? And so it also used to be a huge agriculture state. There's lots of sugar cane and lots of other agriculture sectors that were in Hawaii, and it's like, it kind of destroyed a lot of the land, and so people are trying to
take back the land, so to speak.
They want to take the land back for regenerative ag and kind of be more self-sustaining, self-sufficient, because they live on a tropical island where everything grows and 98% of their food is imported. And so you have these really high, expensive living costs that are also associated with the imports. And then, because tourism has dominated, it makes it really hard for the locals for their living costs, because the cost of property is so high, right? And so it's there's a lot of stuff going on there, and then the cannabis scene is basically, it's just medical, and you can stack cards at a single location as long as you have patience.
Yeah,
right?
But good luck trying to get something from out of state. I walked in there a few years ago as a medical patient from Michigan, and you think, most states have reciprocity nowadays. They were like, oh no, you had to apply 6 months in advance and then get approved and have this card like 1 month in advance before you even fly out. It's like, okay, I guess I'm out,
I've been the people I work with, they've started off really small. They've just by word of mouth been able to grow through this kind of grassroots movement. And so they helped like kill a bill that would have basically destroyed the medical program out there, and it would have been taken over by outside investment firms and stuff. That a lot of those what are coming into Hawaii, right? People who own large swaths of property, international companies and stuff, and they just wanted to protect, that little bit of ag, that could potentially bring profit to the people of Hawaii.
So do you think one of the solutions would be to, you've got to be a resident of Hawaii for so many years, and, because that's kind of what Michigan did with you have to be a medical patient for a couple of years before you can get, a certain license type or whatever. And I think those are probably done with now, but, I love Hawaii, man. It's my favorite state. If I could move there, I probably would. I know I can't afford to, but, and my dream would be to grow cannabis there, but I would want to do it sustainably because it's such a fragile
KNF, baby.
There you go.
Dude,
speaking of KNF, doesn't a lot of the natural farming, like the new stuff that come out of the University of Hawaii there?
That and Chris Trump, yeah, that's.
I'm not 100% sure. I did have a chance to visit a farm, a KNF farm, while I was out there, and they have some really cool stuff going on with the way recycle everything. And that's kind of the main, I think, component that makes it special, is being able to put inputs back in after you've taken them out. And maybe you're not being able to put 100% of what you're taking out goes back in, but a large portion of that is recycled back into the system, whether it's, pig bones being turned into biochar, or different types of waste being turned into biochar, or fermented extracts. Green waste recycling can be done with solid state fermentation. It's one of the ways that they go about implementing those practices, both get biology and the carbon and the nutrition that's associated with those inputs back into the system itself.
So I hope this isn't too much of a tangent here, but I am ready now. Half hour in, learning about you, Brandon. I appreciate you sharing all that with us. I am ready to learn about Bokashi. Tell me what that is. Is that your first product that you came up with?
Yeah, that's what I started with. And, what I was doing was I was just taking a wheat bran. I was mixing in different types of minerals in there, things like gypsum and some meals and stuff like that. And then what I would do is I would inoculate it with a consortium of microorganisms that have several species of bacillus. It has a photosynthetic bacteria, a Pseudomonas strain, and it also has a Saccharomyces, which is a fermentive fungi. And this consortium is really powerful, and it will ferment those nutrients. It will ferment the substrate and inoculate it. They'll use the mineral content. They'll mobilize it. They'll release it helps aid to release the mineral into an elemental form that's usable by the plant. And that was kind of the first product. It's been used for a lot of green waste recycling, for food scraps and things like that, to just the brand itself that's been inoculated. I have found that the biggest benefit, especially in these living soil systems, is it acts as a great substrate for the earthworms and all of the biology that can feed off of those grains and the breaking down of that organic matter, and that can use that carbon source. The mineral elements are a bonus, but I haven't been so much focusing my cultivation practices using the Bokashi itself, because I've been addressing any type of nutrient issue with a single source of nutrition. Like if I'm addressing calcium, I'll use gypsum. If I'm addressing magnesium, I'll use Epsom salt or magnesium sulfate. If I need to address nitrogen, I'm going to use something like amino acids. So I'm using one thing to address one thing. And if you use something like a meal or something that's all blended together, you're just tossing, one thing, a bunch of stuff at it. And I don't look at it from that perspective any longer. I use that Bokashi for a microbial inoculant and then the carbon that's associated with it.
So let me stop you there real quick, because you're almost applying what it sounds like. You're applying the idea of growing synthetically to organics, right? Because if I'm growing in cocoa or some soilless media, I'm trying to feed the roots, and I'm really targeting certain nutrients, right?
Let's actually to define what synthetic and organic cultivation is. Let's first define what organic is. So organic, and when we're talking about organic chemistry, is it's going to be attached to carbon, right? The element of carbon is like Legos. They can build up
basis for life.
Yes. Well, when we're talking about organic chemistry, we're talking about carbon-based molecules. And so there's not a lot of carbon-based molecules that plants can actually absorb. What plants absorb are inorganic molecular elements. The things that you see on a periodic chart as calcium, the only form that is available is its cationic form, which is Ca2+. And if you're looking at that, it's hard to think of what that is, because you're putting in a white powder substance that is a rock. But in reality, it's break it the amount, the size that it's using, it's a molecule, right? And if you think of what a molecule is, you can think of an atom. And an atom, 1 million atoms will fit along the width of a hair. So a molecule is usually just
very small.
a couple of atoms, right? And so we're talking about really, really small scales. That's what plants use. And there's only specific forms, right, that they can use. Like for nitrogen, it's ammonium and nitrate. And so, and then there's only 3 different ways that they can get them, right? So mass flow, diffusion, and inception. So mass flow is from solution, right? When water is introduced into the system and they're attached, or those elements are suspended in water and they come in contact with the root.
Are we talking? Wait, okay. So that's my question. Are we talking roots here? Or are we talking,
Roots.
Okay.
These are the ways that roots can take up these different elements. So it's only certain elements can be absorbed, and only in certain ways. Like phosphorus, for instance, only phosphate with HPO4 is plant available, and it is only available through mostly one mode of action, which is diffusion. It's not going to be absorbed through mass flow or usually through inception. Well, there are some small amounts that are. Most of it's going to be diffused, and what that means is there'll be a lower concentration gradient near the root, and if there's a higher concentration gradient in the soil, it'll move down. Right. So it's kind of like when you put salt in a glass, what'll happen is if most of that will become salt water, some of it can perspire out, right? And it'll settle out the bottom. But if you just have the right amount, it fills up and it just becomes a new element, and that will move, right? It'll move with the water. So those elements are when they're able to move in soil, and then the plants can actually pump out exudates as well that can help attract them, like they can pump out like a hydrogen ion, right? And so that hydrogen ion will attract in that phosphate anion. So that's how it kind of works.
All right, but now you got to tell me about Inception, because all I can think of while you're talking, and since you said that, is Leonardo DiCaprio. So what is Inception?
Inception is when it comes in contact through root mining. Well, the root is growing through soil. The new root tip hairs will come in contact with elemental molecules that they can absorb.
Are we getting charged for this? I feel like I've learned so much so far.
Like feelers.
But he was talking about 100-foot long beds too. Now think about what he can get going on in one of those, as far as exudates and the hyphae and all that transport and shit. Dude, that thing is working.
So it's really interesting what we're looking at, and the reason why these systems are a little more efficient is because we're looking at something called nutrient use efficiency. Now, if you're looking at it from a percentage on a bottle, right? So if you have something that has 10% nitrogen, 10% phosphorus, 10% potassium, right? Typically those chemicals, they're stored differently because they'll react, right? So you have different parts for different things, and you can't really. What happens is when you add them to water, they react, because chemicals react with water. They're also going to react with the things that are already in the soil. So you only get maybe about 10% of that 10% is going to be biologically available. And then only 2% of that, maybe 3%, is going to come in contact with the root, because the root by mass of the soil is only maybe 2% if you have crops in there, right? So we're looking at a nutrient use efficiency of something that has 10%. It's 10% divided by 10% divided by 2%, and that's 0.0002%. So it's a very, very small nutrient use efficiency. And then we have to look at how much of that 0.0002% is adequate enough to get into the tissue of the plant for all of its metabolic functions to complete its life cycle. And it's really complicated, but all the things have already been done over years. Since the 70s, we've had hemp target levels for tissue and all these things. So all I have to do is make sure that I maintain those levels.
Okay, so how are you growing right now today? Like, do you have a personal grow? Are you only involved in commercial grows?
Everything I do is on the books right now. It's all I work with some really, really large farms out here in Oklahoma. I work with quite a few people, actually. I work with somebody up in Michigan as well. I have I'm going out to Arizona. I'm all over the place, and it's because this takes the guesswork out of the cultivation space, right? If you know exactly what you need and you have someone say, hey, add X amount of X, and this will keep you sufficient and balanced, it's easy as long as they're doing the basic maintenance. For me, what I'm doing, and everybody I work with is doing the same thing across the board, and they're following my target recommended levels for cannabis cultivation. And so what they'll do is they'll periodically throughout the cycle send off soil samples to Logan Labs, and then they'll email me the results of their soil and saturated paste test. I look at those two pieces of data, and based off of that data, I tell them, hey, you need to add X amount of X.
What's the magic number, Brandon?
Well, see, that's it. There's the magic number is contingent on that data, and that data changes. However, there is things like, I know that if you add a third cup of solution grade gypsum to 1 yard of soil, it'll bring up the parts per million of that soil of calcium in solution by 10 parts per million. So I can make charts and basically create Google Sheets, which is something I'm working on. So this will all be automated. So what will end up happening is my clients will no longer be emailing me any of the stuff. What they're going to be doing is going on my website, and they're going to just type in all of the numbers from the data that they got back from the lab, and they'll get an automatic spreadsheet that says exactly what needs to be added. So this will reduce the cost by about 50% to the people I work with, because it'll be all automated, and
True
they
agriculture
have access to all the same exact amendments, right? The same amendments from the same place. That way we know we're not getting heavy metal contamination.
Standardized.
We're not getting, and then here's the kicker, right? All these farms that I work with, they all have quality, consistent product all the time. And so I have this large pool to pick from when I decide to do the distribution end, right? So I have this huge pool of organic flower, in the way that if this new legislation passes in Oklahoma, when federal legislation passes, it has contingencies, and Oklahoma will be allowed to distribute cannabis to any of the other states depending on their local legislation. So,
Brandon, are you familiar with the Rhythm? The like, it's similar to Dosatron, if you will, but it's like a giant machine that mixes nutrients and sends them out to different zones in flower rooms and all that. Anyways, it's a giant robot that sits in the water room that kind of mixes nutrients for you. I'm curious to know if you could partner up with someone like that, and if it would work with like the organic nutrients, like you're saying.
Such an old grow tube question.
Everything is possible, right? It's
Amen.
in the realm of possibility, because we possess the technology as well as the programming linguistics to be able to achieve those goals. Just like making those spreadsheets, it's basically you're building a calculator on a formulation. Someone puts in a number, it says, oh, this happens. It computes it for you, spits it out. It makes it all automated. Now, if you have the right type of equipment that can get you, that's the trick, right? That is going to be the biggest trick for this cultivation, because if you might be able to look at EC right now and dry backs and stuff like that, like they have for like Arroyo systems and stuff.
What am I looking at?
Custom mix. Oh, you need to add more A or B or whatever, but those blends are pre-blended. It's not like you can test right on the spot your iron that's in solution and then just adjust iron, because I don't think they have the technology as far as the metering goes, right? Because to get these analytics, they're using a multi-million-dollar
That's an amazing screen share.
This machine that they're using is like gas chromatography, liquid HPLC type machines, and they're being able to do the analytics on these really, really expensive pieces of equipment. And, so the data that I'm actually looking is just a snapshot in time of that solution.
Yeah, man.
Brandon, as a follow-up question to your charts, for the viewers, like, how much does it cost to get your soil tested? Like, you know, if I was to come to you and be like, you know, what do I got to do to get my soil right? What's the soil testing cost?
Okay, so Logan Labs, it costs $55 to do a standard soil and a saturated paste test. And I need both pieces of data because I'm looking at soil, which tells you a total all overview of what is in there, and then saturated paste shows you what is biologically available in solution. So as you water and that soil is hydrated, what falls in as the molecular element that is plant available. Okay, so you make your adjustments based off of both of those two pieces of data. Now, I actually charge more because I'm currently charging $100 to do the analytics, right? So I look at the data and I say, hey, you need to add this, 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 and that. Now, if you're running something like a large bed with a large soil volume, you can pretty much get a full run out of one recommendation, but I always recommend that you test at least 2 weeks into flower or right before flower, because then you can adjust anything that you need to make sure that you hit your numbers, right? But if you have a system where you're running smaller pots, like 7-gallon pots, those people are doing it more frequently, right? They're testing a little more frequently, like maybe every 20 days or so.
What's the volume that's tested as far as like how much soil are we submitting?
You're usually submitting about 1.5 cups of soil.
1.5 cups. Okay.
Yeah, 2 cups of soil if you want. They'll keep your soil on hand as well, just in case you need any retests or.
Dumb question. Where should I, if I get that 4x8 bed, right, and I want to do this, it's going to cost me $55. So where would I want to get my soil from? Do I want to get it from the top? Do I want to get it from closest to the plant? Do I want to get it down in the soil a little bit?
I usually take it from about 3 to 4 inches below the soil surface.
Okay, actually into the roots itself, where that's
yeah.
at. Okay,
where the roots
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so if you're gonna, it can be cost effective because it's like this. How much of that stress factor of not knowing what you're going to need to add or trying to guess based off of visual symptoms. And if you have a visual symptom of a deficiency, you're already well past 50%.
Too late. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're actually doing, especially if you're deficient in phosphorus, right? Because your whole system,
you can't chase that. Yeah.
You can't chase some of these things. You cannot chase because phosphorus has to be solubilized by microorganisms from inorganic sources. It's like calcium phosphate mineral.
What's the timetable on that though? Like really?
It can be done in real time. It's not, but the amount everything else is happening in real time too. Photosynthesis is happening in real time. Transpiration is happening in real time. The carbon chains the plant is building is happening in real time. So you need to be able to solubilize these minerals, and if you don't have an adequate amount in your soil to begin with to have solubilized, then it doesn't matter, right? You could dump in all the biology you want, but if you don't have a phosphorus mineral of some sort or something that can release that HPO4, that phosphate molecule, then it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much biology you dump in there.
What's your number one phosphate source?
So I personally like to use CalPhos.
CalPhos. Okay.
Soft rock phosphate. But there's also some things that work really well, even in organic systems, and it's not technically organic because they're using like something like sulfur to solubilize.
That's where the gypsum comes in for me.
So something like super triple phosphate, right? They'll basically do what microbes do, right? A microbe will solubilize that inorganic mineral using an enzyme. Right. And it'll use, or like an organic acid. And so what we've done is, we can use acids to take this completely insoluble form of phosphorus and turn it into a solubilized form. And it's still a rock. It's still rock, like mineral. It's just been treated, right, with an acid. And so you can use that, and that'll give you a higher level without disturbing biology. And
that's above my pay grade.
To the environment. So it's it's about nutrient use efficiency, right? If you can get a phosphorus source that has 46% phosphorus in it, as opposed to something that has maybe 3%, you're going to only need to add far, far less. So there's less potential for runoff or for misuse or misapplication, and you get a higher return on the nutrient use efficiency because there's a higher percentage of it. So you went from maybe something that was 3% or that 10%, right? So if you have something that's 3% divided by 10% divided by 2%, you're looking at a nutrient use efficiency of something like, I think it's like 0.00007 or something like that. I'd have to do the math.
Wait, but why does House and Garden nutrients work so well then when I spend so much money on this lack of efficiency?
It works well because it is in the form that inorganic molecular form for the most part, right? You're going to get a large volume of that. And also when you're in these hydroponic systems, your delivery method is similar to the agronomic approach, right? You're fertilizing like people do banded fertilizers in ag row crops, right? And they're not fertilizing the whole soil. They're putting it right down where the roots are at, right? Because that increases the efficiency. If you know your roots are right there, you do in orchard, you put it right down those bands. You're not doing the 5-6 feet in between. You're not fertilizing that because it's a waste, right? You're getting it right where it needs it. In hydroponic systems, you're taking something that is available and you're constantly going, right? It's running. Like I've ran hydro systems that are drip fed constantly, right? And there's always solution running through them right where it needs it. So you can increase the efficiency, but what happens is those things start to react. Those nutrients don't stay in that biologically available form. That's why you see the precipitation of salts build up. They become unavailable and the plant can't accumulate them any longer. And so all that gets wasted, right? And all that goes down the drain.
Quick question though. And I've had this before. If I have a salt buildup on top of my pot, right? I'm sure we've all seen this before. Looks like
I was just thinking about this.
Yeah. It's very white, crusty. You might think that it's mycorrhizae or some fungus or something growing, right? But it's just salt buildup. If I water it in a little bit, just watering it in a couple days, one after another with a little bit of water to try to break down those salts and get them to the roots. Does that work, or is it just unavailable at that point?
Well, it doesn't. You might be rinsing them off of the top of the soil, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be biologically available. I mean, some of them might be, as they're broken down or mineralized, or there's some kind of reaction taking place between the root exudates and those minerals. But for the most part, they'll fall out of solution. They'll turn into a chemical that can't be used, and they're not really attached to anything. So you can kind of leach them out.
Can I make a very big claim then right now? Fuck your runoff. Why are we testing runoff?
I don't. Well, runoff.
Not you personally. I'm just saying to everyone out there. Why are we testing runoff then?
So I don't test the runoff, and I try to reduce any runoff. And actually, like with the system that I have currently in my indoor, all runoff goes into the tray that it's sitting in, right? So it's going to if that soil starts to dry out, as that soil dries out, that water and anything that was in that solution is going to go back into the soil. I'm using things like Kiaha, which is a surfactant. And what that can help do is it can help distribute all of those minerals and elements evenly throughout that system.
Before we get too far away from this, though, the runoff test in organics is the saturated paste test that he was talking about earlier.
No, that's different. No.
For that saturated paste, they take your soil and they saturate that with water, and they're getting the reason in synthetics why you measure runoff is to get an idea of what your media, to give you an idea of what's in your media, and that's kind of the same idea in organics would be the saturated paste, in my opinion.
Like a
giving an idea of when that is fully saturated, what's available in the water, kind of.
So the saturated paste test is actually a weak acid extract. I think they use a certain type of water that has a certain pH, right? So it acts similar to like a weak organic acid that a plant might release through its exudate to solubilize what's in the soil, right? And so there's also different labs that'll do different things, like a slurry test where they'll actually just use the water, they'll mix it up. But with this method, it gives you a better kind of accurate piece of data. So for organics, if you were to test your runoff, which I've done, I could see things like I've had parts per million that were like 7,000. I didn't know what those were from, though. I just knew that it was a soluble salt that is being read by the meter, but I don't know if it's bicarbonate. I don't know if it's sodium. I don't know if it's chloride that it's reading, or if it's calcium, iron. It doesn't give you an indication of the balance of those nutrients or the quantity of those nutrients.
Anytime I've ever tested soil, it's always had a number like that too, like 7,000 or 8,000, some crazy number.
Well, aren't you also supposed to not have runoff on like an organic soil base? You know what I mean? Because aren't you?
Yeah, and I don't think
potentially be washing out nutrients
or anything like that.
Yeah, it's a different philosophy on growing. I'm trying to get used to it indoors. You know what I mean? Like,
would you say,
When I
Sequence?
tested my soil whenever I ran organics, it was way, way high. I was freaking out compared to what I used to run with salts. And so then I would freak out, but my plants looked fine. So as long as the plants look fine, I think,
Yeah, people don't typically measure ppm for organic plants, I don't believe.
No, I never did.
For the salt growers,
what was available.
But that's what's really interesting with the saturated paste. The saturated paste does give you the total ppm of soluble salts, which is things that are going to be able to be used. So if I wanted to set my target at 800 ppm for a light veg soil and mix up a batch of soil, I would know exactly what I needed to add to get to that level. And then if I wanted to say bump that up to like 14 or 15 for really heavy flour mix, I would know what I needed to do to get to that level and still keep everything balanced as well.
Just real quick, would you say soluble, like in terms of breaking down into something that's being able to uptake from a solution? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
okay,
because
just checking.
most of the nutrition is available through mass flow, so it's coming from solution. Again, there are the other types, but that's a large majority of what's being taken up.
Real quick, I read something about tree roots recently, and how they, we're so used to having these tall, deep pots for cannabis plants because we grow them for 4, 5, 6 months or something like that. But a tree, say a solid oak, maple tree is something you have in whatever your backyard or at your local park. The roots don't grow down like that. It might have a tap root, it might have a couple like stability roots, but it really grows real wide along the 2-3 feet deep in the surface. If you were to plant like this 100-foot long planter bed, is that kind of the concept you have and that you're dealing with? Isn't that they grow out, or is cannabis unique in that it really just wants to go down into the earth? Because that's how I feel like it acts.
Yeah, I've actually was recently just talking about this. From what I've seen, if you have a large volume of really healthy, nutritious soil, you really don't need, I think, more than 12 inches for a bed. Anything else is kind of, I've seen it just kind of be more than you really need. I'm not seeing, with the exception of seedlings, really these like really deep tap roots. And this also allows, because if I go and reach, from all my experience with the beds, when I go and reach in there, there's a root mass, and that root mass pretty much stops at a certain point, and I can
absolutely
I can see it. And so there's not a real reason to have another 6 inches under there of soil that's never going to be really used, and to potentially have, a layer of really highly nutritious soil that never gets anything. Because as I'm watering, minerals and gravity, it's eventually going to go down and down. And so if there's like something, a bunch of nutrition that's just not going to be used, from a nutrient use efficiency standpoint, I think it's better to have a shallower bed, because then you can put down the nutrition right where is going to be needed.
But this is clearly like it's a difference between beds and pots though, right? Because I've grown in 5, 7, 10, 15, 25 gallon pots. They always circle the damn, you know what I mean? And those, some of those are 2 feet deep or more.
You never see that in a bed though.
Right. So it always just goes out like the trees do. And that's why I'm wondering, like, I don't know, I don't.
It's for stability, man. Just like when you put your arms out for stability, it's doing the same thing below, because if it grew straight down, the whole thing, because they grow like bushes and get out wide, they would just tip right over. If you've grown like a skinny pot that's tall, the plant will grow almost the same way, because its root structure can't widen out. The plant doesn't really widen out. It stays fairly skinny and goes tall. And if you put it in like a bed, it'll fucking grow. That you'll see cultivars that you think are taller will be a little squatter, because it'll just widen out more.
I'm kind of feeling like a real idiot right now, because I'm thinking about my raspberry garden outside, and we all know like all these plants we grow, like all the vegetables and stuff we grow in our backyard. They get a few inches into the ground. It's definitely not more than 12 inches. I've got all these raspberries like grown for generations of my family, and they're in a 2-foot tall bed. What am I doing? I'm just wasting all this soil, aren't I? Might have to make 2 beds out of it. Rethinking my vegetables, guys.
It's holding water and shit for you though too. If it was a lot less, it would dry out quicker, and maybe whatever it. If it's working, keep doing the same thing.
That's true.
That's true
Don't
too.
rethink it. Keep it.
Yeah, that's true too. You have to,
especially wild ones. Keep them.
Oh, they're not wild. They like I said, they're a generational thing. I've grown them at 3 different houses. My dad's been growing them for decades.
They're definitely established then.
Yeah, if they're happy, because those things are kind of difficult.
All right, gosh.
Shish.
I talked him out of that epiphany real quick.
Yeah, he thought he was onto something.
If you're gonna get rid of it, call me. I'll come get them.
We're gonna be on to hash time here in just a second.
He can
Hopefully
still
you guys
keep
have
them.
all your
He's just
accoutrements
gotta
ready.
hold them in a pot for an hour while he makes 2 beds, and then he can propagate further. Then you'll have twice as many for Growley. Remember,
Like I said,
twice as
I've
many.
transplanted them across the state a few times. They're good to me.
I wish you guys cared as
Hash
much
time.
about aloe.
My flat bell there.
We love aloe
There it
too.
goes.
We
Just gotta
just
start
can't
growing
grow
it.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's not a
Especially
very
me,
good
because I'm
cold
always
weather plant.
moving.
We got a hash time song.
I'll
We
bring
just
my
gonna hum it.
aloe in for the winter.
I can play it.
So, Brandon, halfway through our show, we have hash time, where we all smoke some hash, dabs, or whatever you got. Gives us a break.
Well, I gotta
Community
get,
cheers.
we're back.
Ooh, is that trim tray hash red, or is that no bubble? That's a shitload.
Yeah, it's trim tray hash.
Okay.
What?
Strawberry cream. We're sadly all out of
Cheers,
double hash.
everybody.
That good,
Got
Becca?
some Mr.
this.
Nasty from Yeti Stash tonight.
Is-
Cheers, everybody. Cheers, Becca. Cheers, Rad.
Cheers, Tara.
Double hash. Cheers, everybody. There's some hash, man. I'm backwards, so I don't know how to. There we go.
Anybody notice how Brandon and Skilbo look like they might be in the same studio?
Yeah, I was getting confused back and forth there.
I thought the same thing.
If I was that cool, man. You know, I'm just saying, man. Shout out to Brandon Russell. Still cool coming from the cheap home girl.
And shout out to everybody hanging
Shout
out
out
in
to
the
Shanna
chat.
Chronic for the song.
Yeah, if you guys,
Cheers.
if people watching haven't heard of the Cheap Home Grow podcast, check it out. Brandon's a regular on the show with me, and Jack Greenstock,
Growing with my fellow
Dr.
growers.
Coco.
OGs, man. OGs originals.
Right before the show.
I was just saying I was before this show, on that show, I was saying, that show's my Genesis show. That's the first YouTube show I was really on. And it's cool that I'm still
Same.
able to do it.
And if you
Same.
go
I
back
was on
far
the very
enough,
first
you will
Growing
see
with my
Skilbo
fellow
on there.
growers.
I love tuning in. Everybody's so chill and nice, and it's a great show to watch. I really enjoy it, and I'm very picky on my shows, so I definitely watch that. Cheers, everybody.
Did you watch 12 Days Awake and Bake, Terra Nation?
Oh, of course. Know it. Always want that.
Shout out Doc Vegas. That's the.
Oh, Doc Dinkenstein. Is he in chat? I can't see chat. Is he in chat?
Yeah.
I
Hey, Doc.
haven't seen him yet.
Oh, I can't see chat tonight, and that stinks. So appreciate
Are you
everybody in
you
chat.
on your phone? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I am. I couldn't get my see. I go and get my tablet,
said
and I
cheers to
go and get a Galaxy one and an Android-ish thing, thinking I am gonna be okay with everything, and it stinks. So I'm on my iPhone.
Hey,
It's
Big
just
I
like
Bone.
taking
the story of the song. What a good song! If you guys want to check it out, you can find it on Apple Music.
Go for Dick's Medibles. Grab a bag of dicks.
Hey, Bakes, while Taro's grabbing some dicks, can you show off that, maybe showcase that Sherlock you got over
Yeah,
there?
let's
That
see what's
thing
going
is-
on there.
is a
Why are you
big
hiding,
animal.
hiding that thing on everybody?
Let me
Let's
see
what's
it.
going on here.
Speaking of dicks, Bake, what do you got going on?
Oh, here you go.
Right.
Big dicks.
We were talking about it this week, though.
It's just a.
Oh my god, that's too cool.
This is what I usually go for.
Yeah, man.
It's
For a
amazing.
flower.
dude.
That's
I love
so
that thing.
freaking cool.
Little fume work
Love
on
it.
there.
So classy. So
Love it, love
classy.
it, love it.
Well, that goes away when I clean it.
Sequence. Have you
Yep,
turned on the kiln lately?
No, that's
It's
next
too
week's
cold.
project.
Right
No,
on.
Painted Lady got me a heater for the garage, so I'm gonna crank that sucker up. And
This
try
is
to
where we
make-
need that winning Price is Right sound because we can cue at that point instead of the losing.
We
one.
haven't even
Winning.
used the
Plinko
soundboard
sound.
tonight. Better cue it
Between
up
the
now.
heater and the extraction fan, I'm gonna go deaf in there.
I went
Brandon's
on.
gonna
I
be
went
like,
on.
"Screw
I
you,
went
I'm
to.
out."
I went to the Price is Right while I was tripping nuts.
Hell yeah, man!
No way.
Now is this Bob Barker or
They had
is
a bit
this
in blast.
Drew Carey?
It was Drew Carey, but they interview everybody that goes in there, so
You're
they
just
through their selection process.
blown out.
And the producer of that show knew we were high as fuck because when we were in there, like during the commercial breaks, there's actually like larger lulls than you see on TV. And Drew Carey, he interacts with the audience and stuff. He was dancing for us and singing about smoking weed, and they were like he was like playing Afro Man. And,
Badass.
Yeah.
What year was this?
man, this was maybe like 2011, maybe 2012,
Fuck yeah,
2013,
man.
maybe.
That's cool.
Dude, Bob Barker, and you know, R.I.P. Bob. But remember to spay and neuter your pets. That's the
Are you
super
good at
important.
guessing the price of household products?
Dude,
Oh,
I
fuck
was
yeah,
like
dude.
on it when I was watching that stuff. But
Yeah.
it's more of like what, like if I have time to watch The Price is Right at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably shunning some other responsibility.
Fuck it up, yeah.
Hey, my introduction
point.
to it was in 4th grade when my teacher used to put it on every day for lunch, and I learned so much about
yeah.
spinning wheels.
Rod Roddy in a new car.
Half days, man. Half days.
Half days, sick days. Because back in the day, dude, back in the
Sick
day,
days.
there was like 5 channels. So check it out. You're either watching that or you're watching, a couple
Back
other
in the
game shows.
day.
Dude, this is so back in the day that it's like back
You
in
know
the
what,
day's
man?
day.
They had an episode with Snoop Dogg on there, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
It's
man.
so funny because everybody won.
Bob Barker's
Everybody.
still alive. Holy shit, is Bob Barker still? No, he can't be alive.
Him and
Oh,
Tupac are on
I
a
don't
island
know.
somewhere.
Did he die? I have not heard that he died.
Pretty sure he
Did
did.
he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I
he
don't
did.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not
Couple
gonna
years
fact
ago.
check.
Somebody in the chat do a wellness check for me.
All
and
right,
find out.
maybe.
No,
I'm pretty high.
Bob Barker was pretty. He was up there.
The price is right, bitch.
He was up there.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Sequence. dude.
So, Brandon,
Who's
after
gonna
you're
look it up?
smoking and trying
Dude,
your,
I think he's alive.
I think he is too.
He's gonna
Oh,
fucking come to my door and be
Wikipedia.
like, the price is right.
Are we
bitch.
getting
Knock me in the
Jeopardy
face.
mixed up with
I'm
this?
kind
Come
of
on,
with you,
guys.
babe.
Yeah.
I think he's still alive. Who's
I'm
looking
not-
up?
He's
Oh,
98 years old.
Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
seeing anything on his health.
Yeah, it
Is
just
there
says
an
Is there an
born
end date
All right.
though? I mean,
1923.
Can we get a poll on this one?
I
Steve?
think
Jesus.
he's still
Damn, he's
Steve,
just
we
he's
get a
gonna
poll.
be
Years active, 1950 to 2007.
Still giggling.
I don't know
How
what
did
Betty
that
White.
means.
How did that
That's
bro
right,
not get
Alexis,
me too?
Happy Gilmore.
He's going for Betty White's record, man. He's got a couple more years.
Yeah.
To
Just by reading chat, I still don't know if he's alive or dead.
He's alive.
Chat's really up in the air on
Tell
it.
you.
he passed
Yeah,
away
he's
on
alive.
October 20th, 2015. 2 police officers passing Barker's Los Angeles
Really?
area home saw him
What?
trip and fall on a sidewalk. Wait, that's how he died?
The
Oh,
ghost of Bob
what?
Barker.
You're making
What?
me
We are
No,
way
Yeah,
back.
let's stop. Let's get off this.
Are you on the Onion?
No.
Are you reading it on the Onion? What are you on?
This is Google.com.
Do not listen to me ever.
The price is
Why?
wrong.
Which one
Apparently.
is it? I'm still confused.
This is an
Who was
educational
James
program.
Charles?
We'll learn together.
I say put up a poll.
According to Wikipedia, he's alive.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
regardless, spay and neuter your
So
pet.
who the hell died on the sidewalk? For girls?
I don't know. Apparently Bob Barker. The
Alex
other
said
Bob
it was-
Barker.
Dude,
Alex. Becca said it was Alex Trebek.
He died from
root
cancer.
renovation knows.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's Jeopardy
Sorry, I
though.
can't-
And then
I'm not gonna laugh about that.
hold on, there's one other game show.
Berenstain or
real
the
big one.
Berensteins?
Wait,
All
the
right.
Wheel of Fortune. Who's the Wheel of Fortune guy?
Pat Sajak.
Oh,
Yeah, I met him
Vanna White.
twice. He's
Is he like
he wasn't very
5
nice to
foot
me.
2? Because he
I
seems
mean,
like he
everyone
would
looks
be.
5'2" to me, but
But don't.
Dang, I thought the Wheel of Fortune dude had a name that I recognized. I definitely
Pat?
don't recognize that name.
No?
well, it's
Yeah.
The same dude for
female, the what
Vanna White.
Vanna White.
yeah,
Vanna
that
White.
one. You recognize that one.
I do recognize that one.
So
All right.
to change
Brandon,
the subject, Brandon, I just wanted to ask you. We haven't really talked to you about any of your breeding, and I know you've been. I mean, I just grew
I
out
know.
the
I wanted to do Bull
limelights
Rider.
and fucking loving that. So, do you
I
have
wanted to
anything
ask
like
the question.
in your little grading, in your little breeding? It's not a tent. Your breeding container that you got going right now that you're excited about.
Okay, so I actually parted ways with Black Label. I took over my girlfriend's brother's place, and then I'm working on some other things that'll happen in the future. What I did was I had some cuts. I had some male plants that I had preserved that I keep on backup, and I gave a bunch of my select cuts to my friend Trevor, who works for Bokashi Earthworks, and he's doing the work, like the actual breeding work, but it's just all of my cuts. So we're working together on that. So I have my Black Lime Reserve male, and that's going to go on to 2 different female phenos of original Starfighter from Alien Genetics. That's coming up. And then also the Black Lime Reserve is going on to my female selection of the Black Lime Reserve. And I had like about 60 Black Lime Reserves that I chose from.
Wow.
So I'm
Nice.
Black Lime Reserve F2, and then the Black Lime Reserve on the Blueberry Mac Muffin from SFV Genetics. So that project is happening right now. It's all pollinated. They're just finishing out on the seed production, and then we'll test that stuff. I did release the Limelight and the Blacklight, and the Blacklight is, well, I'll go with Limelight first. Limelight is my Limarilla, which is Black Lime Reserve times Gorilla Glue, and then I crossed that into Mac V2. So that's what Limelight is. And then I took my same male that I used to make all my F2 Limelights, and I hit I did open pollination on all the Black Lime Reserve females that I have to make the Blacklight. So it's Black Lime Reserve, Gorilla Glue, Mac, and Black Lime Reserve.
All winners.
Yeah, so there's that. That's been released. Those are all
What's your favorite leaner on that one?
So yeah, if you had to compare those two, your black lights and your limelights, flavor or terpene profile wise, how do they differ from each other?
The Limelight has more of that that doughy, like hot dog water terps that you get from like the Mac. But also there's kind of like a more green on some of them that I found on the Limelight. I got like this green apple, either like dipping sticks and with like the lime peel, and then some of them I got like this. Like, do you guys remember back in like the 80s when your parents would buy the bulk bag cereal and they put it in those clear containers with the little pop lids?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Who
so
still does that?
you're like at the end of those containers, when you get down to the bottom, the cereal would be stale, right? And it, like, as soon as I smelt that profile, it instantly brought me back to smelling like a stale Fruit Loops from one of those containers with the lime peel in there. So the Limelight has these like candy lime peel, weird nostalgic thing for me. And then the Black Lime Reserve is more of the musky lime, or the Black Light is more of that musky lime, and then sometimes candy apple terpene profile.
Do you happen to have any lab tests on those, like for terpene profiles or anything?
No, I didn't do any lab analysis on those two varieties.
Brandon Bull
I
Rider.
I will because I have some growing out, but I do have some other projects too that will be coming up. So the original Starfighter that I got from a friend, he gave me 4 seeds. 3 of them popped. 2 of them were female. 1 of them was male. So I have this male also, and the Starfighter is like, it's a freaking rad plant. And so I'm going to probably put the Starfighter onto the Black Lime Reserve as well as the other Starfighters that I have. So I'll keep everything kind of in that same family. That's all the work that I'm doing is all that. And I do have the blueberry stuff. So far, I think everybody that's gotten and tried the blueberry Train Mac, which is an old school NorCal train wreck cut, crossed into F4 DJ Short blueberry from in like 2001, and then I took some seeds of that. I found some nice phenos and I crossed into the Mac V2, and so far those have turned out amazing. They have great terpene profile. They get fucking huge. They're frosty.
They still retain that blueberry.
Yeah, they have so it really has a very, very pronounced lemon pine, like the train wreck, which also has kind of a kerosene. It's not like the fuel like gasoline. It's very specific, like musky kerosene smell, but it also has that very, very pungent blueberry front end on it. So it has that train wreck that's really in there. And the thing is too, it has that train wreck high too.
Yeah, they're racy. Yeah, that's good shit.
So I had a really nice male of that I was going to use, but when I got that Starfighter, I put all the blueberry stuff on the back burner.
I just started germinating some old seeds you gave me. Sour cheeseberry. It's got the blueberry train wreck.
Well, the thing is if he's got a tall blueberry that's a yielder, that's always kind of the thing, was to find a DJ Short that would yield. You know?
Oh yeah, dude. That sour D, that so that right there, I have a cut of that still, and that was we did a contest, a home grow contest, maybe a year and a half ago, and that thing has some really the pheno I have has really rare terpenes, delta 3 carine, oceamine, and another kind of rare terpene, and then it also has a very high terpene percentage. Most people were getting about 3.5, but there was one that was all the way up into almost 5.
What are those weird terpenes? What do those have like as a flavor profile? Can you explain any of those?
It's exactly like its namesake. It's sour, it's cheese, and it's berry.
Oh man.
That's why I'm so excited.
Oh, baked. You lucked into that one, brother.
Those are old. I don't know if those seeds will even pop, man.
Yeah, we'll see. They're pumping up. They're pumping up. If they don't germ by tomorrow midday, I'm cracking them.
Yeah,
you gotta speak them into existence. You can't talk them down like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
I think that's at least one of them.
If the crack doesn't work, I have some gibberellic acid. I can.
There you go.
Perfect. We'll rush that over. Yeah, it'll be emergency seed poppage stuff.
for Girly, you always have your favorite question that you want to ask every single guest that comes on, and it's one of your pet topics.
How do I grow more terps?
There you go.
So I am okay. Real quick about me, Brandon. I come from a processing background, specifically hydrocarbon processing. So I use a tri-blend of butane and propane and isobutane, and my kind of focus is on single source soil to oil, seed to sale, whatever you want to call it, right? I try to process pretty much everything that I grow, just about. And that really allows me to hone in on these strains that have been growing for 6 or 7, years plus at this point, to figure out how to grow them and how to grow them to, produce maybe more terpenes, more flavonoids, and more that I can capture. I'm really trying to capture the essence of this live plant, because I really truly think the second you cut it down, you start hanging it to dry it, it starts degrading, so I'm really in an extract form trying to capture the essence of that live plant, which I think is at its most potent. Do you have any tips for me, whether it be a synthetic grower, an organic grower, indoor grower, outdoor grower?
Let's do the organic, since you just came indoors with it.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's do indoor organics. What is the best way to maximize my terpene profile? I'll tell you up front, I've got a Durban Poison Landrace sativa that I've been growing again for about 6 or 7 years. It's tested at its highest 4.31% terpenes by volume. I'd love to be able to get that higher. According to PSI Labs, that's like 99th percentile already. But, I struggle to find very many plants out there or strains out there that can achieve those kind of levels. But I've got some other plants that are excellent profiles. They might only be, 2.7% or whatever. But how do I maximize the terpene profile? Because I'm not here for the THC. I'll be honest. It's all the same. Yeah. It's all the same to me.
So what I've seen with really, really high terpene content plants is they typically don't wash well. They don't wash
100%. Clementine is a great example of that. 1 meal a cup. Washes great in hydrocarbon extraction. I've given it to my friend, Michigan Made Melts, to do in bubble hash and trying to produce in rosin. It sucks. It's just all terpy. We want those big heads.
You'll have a lot more success pressing flour than you would trying to create bubble hash, and pressing that for live rosin. So just like high oil, high terpene producing plants like lavender, usually those plants are going to have a higher demand for sulfur. Sulfur is one of the terpenes that is really going to affect the terpene profile. But there's been a lot of research that also the terpene content can change based off of kind of the nutrition, the overall nutrition, and even biology, right? So different organic acids might, different different secondary metabolites produced by some of these bacteria might trigger an immune response that's going to do something like that. But overall, from a nutrition standpoint, is making sure you have adequate levels of sulfur, and that also that your magnesium and your potassium are balanced and not pushed too hard.
That's fair. I've heard some of those.
And one other thing. This is really, really important, right? So nitrogen will affect your potency and your terpene content, because if your nitrogen content is too high, it will have adverse effects. So you're wanting to see a downward slope towards, as the plant is maturing with your nitrogen, and that'll help.
You got to really be careful with your top dresses then for when you begin flower.
Yeah, that's why knowing how much you need to add and not having to guess, and then also understanding how much of, let's say, of that 12% of blood meal that you're going to add, how long is it going to take for that to break down? Because blood meal will have 100% availability of that nitrogen that's in there broke down after 3 weeks. But it's not everything.
Super high, so it's like a 12 on the nitrogen scale, right? The blood meal is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, around 12 or 13%.
Right, and then like langbonite takes forever, but is that a phosphate?
What, langbonite?
Langbonite, yeah, that takes forever to break down, right?
No, well, here's the problem with langbonite. This is a really good piece of information for anybody who's going to be growing in soil and are trying to use Sulpomag, K-Mag, or langbonite. It's all the same thing under different name. So the chemical formulation of that, it contains sulfur, magnesium, and potassium. And I've talked about this before. The reason why you're never going to want to use that, because it looks like on the label 0.22, right? 22% potassium. However, that potassium is not in a water soluble form. It's going to have to be mineralized. It's going to have to be broken down in soil, and it will be released slowly. However, the magnesium and the sulfur that are in that langbonite are extremely soluble. So you never want to use langbonite to try to add potassium. You can use it as a magnesium supplement, because that magnesium that's in there, maybe 18% magnesium, or maybe it's 9%. I can't remember right off the top of my head. That is going to be extremely water soluble. So if you go into a situation where you're deficient in potassium and you're trying to use langbonite to increase the potassium, what you're actually doing is you're increasing your magnesium and creating more antagonism for
and that's what fucked my plants up.
Already there, because the higher the magnesium, the less availability of the potassium that you're going to have. So you inherently create these imbalances in your soil when you're looking at base saturation, which is all of your 4 major cations: potassium, magnesium, calcium, and then sodium. Sodium you want always low because it's antagonistic. It'll block out all 3 of the things you do need. However, if you're not balanced with those 3 things, they're not going to be able to get into the plant in adequate supply, because calcium is a divalent cation, magnesium is a divalent cation. That means it has 2 associated electrons with it, which means it's going to have more of a charge. And so when it's associated to like organic matter surface or clay colloid, when it goes into solution and disassociates from that surface, 2 potassium ions can take that place. And so when you're going back and forth and you have these exchange sites, you're going to have more potassium that's going to be stuck to those exchange sites if the balance isn't right. So you need everything to be able to fall into solution in the adequate amount.
But I think a safe solution, as far as to answer the original question, as far as, like a broad spectrum approach to helping to increase terpenes, I would say, from what you've said, to all your mineral additions that you're adding, your top dressers, just make sure it's attached to a sulfur, because you can find sulfates that are attached to just about every mineral. Because you can't really overdo it with sulfur, and it's not really gonna cause a whole lot of antagonism.
Can you overdo it with gypsum though, since it has calcium as well?
You can push your calcium levels too high, which antagonize magnesium and potassium. So there's a potential to overdo it. However, in what I see for most commercially available soils, the nutrition isn't enough to adequately get you through a cycle. Even some of the things that have been marketed specifically for cannabis. That's why having the agronomic data for these soils is really important when you go to
coming back to it. Yeah.
So, but I got to ask here, because we definitely, obviously, with your expertise, we have a focus on nutrition here. But I've heard so many times with cannabinoids and terpenes that, like, oh, maybe like 24 hours darkness, or like turning down your lights, or making, colder temps or something like that. What is the biology of the plant? Why is it increasing flavonoids? That's the root of really what we need to get to.
So if you have ever smoked, the top, bottom, and middle portion of a plant from one of your arbors, you'll always notice that the lowers always seem to be a little bit more terpy. They have a little bit more like oomph to them. Why is that? And when I'm looking at like everything holistically, what I see is that there's less stress associated with intense lighting at these levels. And if you're talking about things like heat and the stress that are associated with those, because terpenes are volatile, And, a good majority of those are encapsulated in the gland, but the plant is producing a lot of other terpenes in the material itself that are volatile, right? They're also creating flavonoids. They're creating,
pinch a stem. Yeah. Even in veg,
alcohol,
it smells like it,
So I think that if you're able to, if you can run if your flowers are really, they're done bulking out, and you can go ahead and decrease that lighting at the end, right? So that way you're not having this high intense heat and lighting situation. I feel like that can help with terpene production. And then also something that we were talking about earlier is the handling, when it's time to harvest, right? And post-harvest. Those things are really, really important for if you're doing mass scale, it's going to be, and you might be less efficient at maintaining the environmental conditions from the grow room to where they're going to be stored and dried. Like having those types of, processes in place can also increase your production. And I think that's one of the reasons why these smaller craft farms are able to have higher numbers on their testing, is because they're able to implement practices where they're able to get things into the right place at the right time efficiently, keep the environmental parameters for the cure at where they need to be.
Limited amount of handling. Yeah. I feel you on that. I will say though,
drop temps.
Yeah. Right. Personally, I vac seal it and put it in a deep freezer. So it's, not getting oxidized. It's not really losing anything.
Yeah.
But is it true that terpenes kind of recover over the course of a day? Is that a thing? Maybe at nighttime?
I haven't seen like the actual research that shows, hey, this plant is producing more terpenes or less terpenes, because it's like Brix levels, right? Those things fluctuate throughout the day, because when you have photosynthesis happening, you're creating new sugars in the newer leaves, and those are distributed throughout for other cellular mechanics, so at some points you're going to have higher concentrations of sugars that haven't been converted at certain parts of the day. And I think that it's probably, when you're looking at systems in nature, they usually mirror each other, right? So for me, it would be a safe assumption to assume that the same type of thing could potentially be happening with the terpene production, right? Because the plant is going through all these different metabolic processes throughout the day.
Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure having you on here. I don't speak for everyone on the panel, but I really appreciate the education you've personally given me, and I definitely see it in the chat tonight. This has been a great, interesting conversation. Yeah, especially the terps, man. I'm all about the terps.
So I got a question for you, Brandon.
It's really genetics, dude. You have to be able to. This is the big thing. The reason why it's so hard to find these varieties is because they're not being cultivated to their maximum potential. If you're focused on proper nutrition and then looking at this data, you can really, really maximize and see how can you really phenoselect and find those things that are going to kick ass if you don't have those target levels, right? If you can sit back and be like, bam, every time I know that I'm going to do a pheno hunt, these things are going to come out immaculate. So I'm going to have the best ability to select.
That's why I've been growing the same strains for so long.
So come on, Brandon. What's the highest test you've got so far?
Okay, my highest test was a Limarilla pheno, and it was 12.1% total.
That's crazy. I'm calling bullshit.
There you go.
I have the tests. I still have them. I still have them.
Did you get a secondary test from a different lab or something? I feel like that'd be like just a mushy plant at 12%.
No. However, the THC was really low. It was only 18%.
Well, yeah, it's a trade-off. My Durban Poison's only 16% with 4.31% terpenes, but I don't believe that. I really don't, and it's not a personal thing. I just don't believe it.
over the course of me collecting data for these couple of years that this happened, I had other varieties that were 8.3, 7.9, 5.6. So it was really consistently high
And this is like post drying, like regular, whatever, 5, 10, 14-day dry, or, what moisture level were you at?
That was, standard across the board. I think moisture was probably around 9 or 10%. We're looking at, maybe it was even less. I have all the stuff. So from a period of time, I tested a wide variety, because I wanted to look at those and see, how I can improve. I actually lost that cut, unfortunately, but, I found some other really, really nice fucking Limarilla cuts that I know it's
I was about to drive out to fucking Oklahoma to pick up a cut,
right?
bro.
It's tragic. That Bicket OG was pretty incredible. I think it was 4.5 at like 32% THC.
Holy shit, that's a wallop right there, man. Because you're not losing out, you're not giving up any THC for that.
It's so weird too, because it doesn't have any leaf on it at all. It's all just bud. It's not dense though. They're like long and they're hard, but it's just because it has so much surface area on it.
Did it get you really high?
Yeah, it gets you high. It's a good one.
Did you get that from Nick Risden, his Bicket OG?
Yes. Yeah,
he's from Michigan. That's cool. That's your Michigan connection.
One of the other notable varieties that I grew that had incredibly high terpene and cannabinoid content was NL5 Haze.
Man. You still got that?
Oh man, it's another one I fucking lost.
Fuck. That was legendary, like in the 90s, man. Fuck.
Yeah, dude. This thing
should be able to get some still.
13 weeks to fully finish, but at around 11.5, 12, I would take it, and it was hitting 27% THC, and the best test I had on it was, I think, 7.8% terps.
Fucking
and
crazy.
It would
just otherworldly for the time.
It would do the weird things where it would have like triple heads on there, where it would be like a spear going up, and then it would have just these chunkers, just like. It was a really, really unique variety.
All I'm saying is I got to get an account at this lab.
Oh.
So, Brandon, do you have any like silver bullet products you like to use on like every grow or anything like that? I know most growers have like a thing they like.
Yeah, I'm using all the single mineral sulfates as inputs. I've also, in between testing, what I'm also doing is I'm using the Humate fertilizer, the carbon-based fertilizer developed by NASA Agritech. And what that is they take a lignite source, which is it's similar to like coal, I guess. They mine it out of the ground, and it's just basically carbon, but it has a certain ratio of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in it. And what they do is they micronize it, and then they react it with a catalyst to raise the pH, and they introduce all of the micro and macro elements, like mineral sulfates, while it's being reacted. And so what happens is all of those elements, because they're either a cation or anion, they molecularly attach to the carbon. And so it creates a new organic molecule. And so what it does is it takes things that were inorganic, that the plant actually uses in their inorganic form, and then it attaches it to the pure carbon form of carboxylic acid, which is what humic and fulvic acids are created. They're created out of chains, molecular chains of carboxylic acid. And so it works as a transport catalyst to keep these macro and micro elements in the actual biologically available form, their elemental molecular form, attached to the carbon chain. So that way it's 100% biologically available in the soil system. And then what it also is able to do is, because it's introducing that carbon into the soil, it helps increase and stimulate biology, both the populations and the diversities. It also because it increases the biology in the soil. It helps create new soil by solubilizing the inorganic minerals to to form new soil. It also helps with water retention. There's just so much. It's an incredible product and piece of agricultural technology, and they have a couple of plants. They have a plant in China that George built. He built one in Mexico. They're building a second in China because they switched out from these antiquated type of nutrient regimens for this carbon-based solution. Because they're able to get that carbon back into the soil using it, and that's the big part. That's the big part of how
an outdoor cultivation. Sorry to interrupt, but an outdoor cultivation is that something that would like stick in the soil better and not cause less runoff issues?
Yeah, that's the whole idea. The whole idea is to be able to switch out conventional chemical agriculture.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
With the same principles, but with the added benefit of building the biology, adding the soil carbon, but still using those really efficient inorganic molecules, right? But attaching it to carbon to make it organic, so that way you get all the benefits without all the negative impact. Like the biggest part of chemical ag is there's a lot of stuff associated with those things that are compiled over time, and they acidify the soil, and it actually decreases like what is we can consider soil, which is the biological component, through acidification and the reduction of organic matter. And when we're talking about organic matter, we're talking about carbon. So it's the release of carbon into the atmosphere because it's being acidified in the soil. So you're trying to restore that using this type of fertilizer product. So I'm hoping to actually build a plant out here in Oklahoma with them, part of our business strategy. And I think that what we'll see is, because they have 10 years of agronomic data in China, what they did is they increased the rice protein content from 6 to 11% and doubled the yields.
Hell yeah.
We're seeing the same type of data come out of Mexico from the last 2 years of trials down there with different crops. So we're seeing the same thing happen.
Well, it makes sense. Organic food production always brings nutrient dense food. So that's what it seems like.
Yeah. And that's the goal. It's not just to fertilize crops.
Yeah, it's not just yield.
We're not just trying to increase yield of water weight, right? We're trying to increase the nutritional density of the food. That way, we can have more nutrition in bringing into our bodies.
So that's the stuff. I just ordered a pack, the whole pack off of your website, and that is what you're talking about is right now, right? That's the same stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to try that.
It's going to be able to replace hydroponic nutrients as well. I just haven't done the trials to see what the feeding regimens need to look like for these things. Because if you have a 1-part homogeneous solution as opposed to A, B, C, supercharged, do this, you get all the nutrition you need because, again, it's attached to that those carbon molecules. And
also, you can do a 1-part because they won't react with each other because they don't react to carbon.
Exactly. So think of it like this. Think of that carboxylic acid as like these long chains of magnets that have both negative and positive sites attached to them. And you can think of your macro and micro elements as magnets as well. And so one of them is going to be positive, one's going to be negative, and they can stick to the negative and positive sites, right? And so these things aren't permanently stuck there. They're weakly bonded. So that way, the roots can absorb them, and they act as an exchange site. And then also that carbon can be sequestered by the biology as well. So if you have things like fungal filaments and hyphae that require carbon, that they'll be able to sequester that carbon and those micronutrients as well. So you are creating a type of antagonism between plants and microbes, right? Because the microbes utilize the same elements as plants, right? And the same.
But you want that. That's what stimulates the plants to.
But you can mobilize things too. If a microbe gets it and a plant isn't, it's like if a microbe gets it in the 98% of the soil that's not inhabited by that 2% of root, and it's mobilized by a microbe, right? It's consumed, and those microbes are actually physically moving. You know, those microbes might die out closer to that surface area where that root is, and those nutrients, you know, they can be
or they could grow to that point and absorb it.
They
Either
can grow
way.
to that point, absorb it, or they could be diffused.
Oh yeah,
closer to that. Yeah, and there's a sale right
There we
now.
go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw it go on sale. I'm buying it. I went and bought
So
it.
that's all you need? That's 3 parts?
Well, those 3 parts do different phases. So there's an N-humate, which is for vegetative, high nitrogen vegetative growth. There's a transition formula for when you're transitioning into flower, and then there's a high potassium humate that is more geared for heavy flowering. And so you would only just mix 1 part for whatever time you're at. So if you're in veg, you would do, you know, it's 10 milliliters per
gallon
per liter.
Per liter.
So it's
But you're only doing like 40. But you're not doing it every day.
Really not too much, yeah.
No, it is. It's quite a bit as far as.
So what? So could I buy that? And just,
40 milliliters.
Could I run some cocoa still?
Yeah, I haven't done the trials.
I know you haven't done trials, but yeah.
I know it'll work. I just don't know what the recommended like parts per million for nutrient solution input would be, because it's more biologically available and it stays in your solution. It doesn't have salts, right? It's not it's not gonna do some of the things that salt based are going to do, because everything is just stays in there, and it doesn't have any salt in it, right? Sodium's super low in it. Like it doesn't have the capacity to do that because of how it was manufactured.
Did you say once a week on that? Because like, what if I'm using a reservoir?
No,
What
you
would be
wouldn't
the
want
best
to.
options?
You wouldn't, like, if you're in soil, you are not using this like all the time. Like this is
like once or twice your cycle.
Once a week, maybe. If you already have a really good healthy soil, maybe once every other week, and it's really to help add that carbon, and you just get a boost of all those micronutrients,
enzymes and shit too.
The reason, to be honest, the reason I ordered it was I was using it for the to address any deficiency, like a fast way to address it, which you don't get organically.
Yeah, that's really hard to get.
You don't get that with meals. So what is a truly organic would be something like a meal, right? Bone meals, blood meals,
crab meal,
anything that ends with a meal. But the problem with those meals also, right, is a lot of times they have heavy metals, cadmium for bone meals, arsenic for things like kelp, and some of the
and this plant loves uptake heavy metals.
And they will. So you have to be cautious about adding too many like all the things I use are mineral sulfates. So most of those are water soluble and immediately available, and they're used for conventional agriculture for organic food production, right? Add things like gypsum, Epsom salts, iron sulfate, and then you can add in things like, with the exception of plants can use some low weight organic compounds. They can assimilate them like amino acids, and that's one of the reasons why I use the amino acids. So there are some things that you can use that are organic that are going to be immediately available, like amino acids, but meals do have to be broke down. Mineral sulfates, they're available.
Yeah, I've got your amino acids. I've liked using them already, and then the Micro Plus. I'm a big fan. I think I ordered another thing of that too.
Micro Plus,
yeah, that's the one right there. That's kind of like my flagship product. And if you're familiar with products like Mammoth P or Tibius, those types of products, they're geared to help solubilize that inorganic phosphorus and convert it into usable phosphate. Really helps with manganese uptake, that specific consortium. I've seen specifically really high solubility of phosphate with the Micro Plus and manganese, but across the board, you will see better nutrient availability, and then you're also suppressing pathogens, because these are facultative anaerobes, and they're going to outcompete things like Pythium, Fusarium, and those types of pathogens that can
fuck up the roots.
Systems, yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's cheap. It's really inexpensive. It's a $19.99 a liter on the website, and it's on sale right now, but I'm gonna be leaving it at that price. That thing has a really good price point. It's incredibly competitive, and if you scope the consortium under a microscope, you are gonna see so much life. I mean, that stuff is alive. It's not a bunch of dead stuff floating in solution.
Dude, I think the smell, I don't care for the smell myself, but I tell you what, I have to like hold my fucking dog away. I have my little dog, Quibbly, the little pug. I can't keep him, as much as I'd like to keep him out of my grow, I can't fucking keep him out. But every time I pop that bottle, I have to hold it. He wants to fucking eat that so
really
bad.
beneficial for animals
Mr.
because of that specific
That's awesome.
that consortium
Good
is
for their coat.
it's known as effective microorganisms, or EM1, and so there's a massive amount of research from
EM1
animal
and Bokashi.
husbandry, aquaculture, for shrimp farming, tilapia farms. They use this because it's probiotic and it has so many benefits.
My cats do the same thing, Spartan. Whenever I'm using my Bloom stuff,
Yeah, I guess I'll let that fucker lick it then. Well, maybe he'll.
I was always afraid that I was, if I turned my back for 2 seconds and I turned around, he was like,
The Micro Plus is totally 100% safe, non-toxic. You can drink that right out of the bottle. It's not going to taste good, but it's not going to have any negative impact on it's actually good.
Don't tell Red that.
Yeah, I would not recommend it.
Yeah, Red will drink anything.
Red will do a shot of that now.
Red is organic.
No, it's really good for you.
That's a super booch.
It
Oh my
helps
God.
build your microbiome.
Yeah, to be good for your gut, Red.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've probably
It's
eaten some,
it's
let's
got-
be honest.
Shout out to the EM1
Yeah, right.
Bokashi though. That's a great combination, and that'll really get a shit going, man.
Put it in
Well,
my
Rick-
ginger tea.
Brandon, we got about 10 more minutes left in the show. Is there anything that you haven't covered that you want to cover in the last 10 minutes here?
No, I think that we
Flour
covered
versus extracts.
a lot. Flour versus extracts. I personally am more of a flour person, but I love good concentrates because, again, it's another talent and skill. It's another craft. It's another part of this industry. And really, when it comes down to it, the people who are really into high quality concentrates, that mentality helps drive the higher end consumer markets, right? It's really important to have all your heady stoners that are like, you got to check out this company. They got the super fire. You can look and see their single source, and it turns people on to that more almost community driven craft market that's in cannabis.
Amen, brother.
Agreed. So what do you think the future of cannabis is, either in growing or just in general?
Well, I see that there's always going to be a consumer market. That's never going to change. And I feel that there's always new people coming online, new smokers, and a lot of those people are usually exposed to, music and things for references on what is quality, what's kind of hot. And so hype stuff is here to stay. And it's not something that people should necessarily shy away from. It can be embraced if you can cultivate it well and showcase that and use that as a showcase for your farms. I think that marketing machine is already in place, and that people can use that to their advantage while also being creative and growing other things that can help, other varieties that may not have as much popularity, using, those types of business practices. But there'll always be a place for the community. There'll always be a place for craft. There'll always be a place for high quality, and there'll always be a place for the consumer market. I think that it's really important to take into consideration your marketing practices, brand exposure, and to try to stay relevant, because it's a competitive market. And as new states and when federal legislation opens up, this is going to be treated more like an agronomic crop in so many different ways, especially for those consumer markets. And so you're going to have to create different ways to distinguish yourself in these competitive markets. And I think just like there are, craft wineries and craft breweries and these craftsmen that create these high quality products, I think that as long as there's communities based around the craft, there will always be a market as well. So it's really our job and your guys' jobs to keep those communities alive and thriving, so that way that part of the industry can also thrive and live and have space and hold space.
Fuck yeah, man.
And another caveat that I was thinking on, I might have just brought this up on the last show too, is that as more and more legalization pushes, and hey, maybe even federal legalization arrives, there's going to be more access. The people that don't have access now are going to have access, and just that, even if it's a small percentage, even though I think it's probably at least 50%, people are going to run and try it and see for themselves that, hey, I was lied to when I went to school. I was lied to by my government. This is actually, medicinal to me. And they're going to try it again and again, and their tolerance is going to build. And then they're going to have to smoke through a whole joint, and they're going to want something that fucking tastes good. So even people who start in the market not really appreciating quality, I think eventually their end game is going to be quality. So like what Brandon says, I think there's always going to be a market for that quality craft bud. And yes, this stuff can be packaged fairly well and kept fairly well, but I think you're not going to be able to get too far. Yeah. So I think there's still going to be like a stretch of where you're not going to want to, if you're consider yourself craft, you're probably not going to want to send too far away from your grow, because you want to deliver the best product possible.
Well, what if you had a perfectly replicatable, repeatable? Let's go with that.
Replicable.
Because SOPs are supposed to be standardized, right? If you have all the same equipment, if you build this building the same way, it doesn't. If you have enough environmental controls, shouldn't you theoretically be able to, within a building,
not if you don't
create
have
that over and over and over and over again?
You have to not only be able to create SOPs for running the operations, but you have to have SOPs for team building skills and being able to find the right people. Because without the team, it doesn't matter what your SOPs say. If that shit don't get followed.
Exactly. But theoretically, if everyone followed SOPs.
Yeah, theoretically. Hey, it was really nice joining you guys. I'm really tired. I'm way up past my bedtime, so I'm gonna sign off. And I appreciate all the listeners. And
thanks, Brandon.
You guys.
Thank you very much, Brandon.
Thanks for coming by.
Appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Talk to you guys.
Appreciate it.
Well, that was awesome.
And if you like more of that, make sure that you check out Growing with My Fellow Growers, which comes on at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on the Cheap Home Grow channel on YouTube. And you can also see Spartan and Jack Greenstock and everybody else. And I'm not going to play the game. So,
the American Wild.
That was so awesome tonight to listen tonight. Wow.
Dr. MJ.
A lot of information.
Yeah, very
Thank Angel.
Brandon's great.
Brandon's such an interesting dude because, and then he would sit there and talk to you about video games, or he'll sit at anything. So, he's just a cool dude, man.
Kind of been all around, huh?
For anyone that feels like they didn't catch all of that, it's okay. There's replay on this. And even still, if nothing else, you can see the passion that he has for the plant and all the work that he's doing moving forward. So always a good time to talk to him.
Absolutely. Next week, we've got Blue, the inventor of avocado tech. We're going to talk to him about avocado tech and a bunch of organic stuff.
It's a nice back-to-back show.
Yeah, so it'll be a very good one.
Then, of course, no show would be complete if I didn't mention the late session tomorrow night at 11 p.m. Come through, hang out with me and Red and Becca and Spartan and Sequence and Painted Lady. Cheers, Corey. Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. I have been able to be in chat. I hope everybody enjoyed everything tonight.
We enjoyed seeing you again,
Good
Tara.
show.
It's nice to have you here.
Yeah.
Good sound, good quality.
Thanks, guys.
I'll look at highlights.
Appreciate it.
Nice.
Coming up here from the north, hoping I can.
Do we have
Everybody can
outro?
hear me.
Do we have outro?
Oh, I can play the outro.
Oh,
I don't remember.
boy.
I was promised
Oh,
outro last
boy.
week.
Fully produced show. Let's go.
How long was the outro?
Oh, was it
Like
3 minutes or 2 minutes?
56
We're high class now.
Oh, it's only 56 seconds? You gotta
What
vamp.
was that last topic that you brought up right before Brandon left? Because I had a 10-minute conversation to pack into 1 minute.
I don't know.
I swear,
Well-
I was like, "Oh, but there's that one thing," and then I lost it, so I couldn't comment. And Brandon left, and I was like, "Shit."
Drinking probiotics.
No. It was. I don't know. I'll have to listen to it. We'll have to-
Good one.
Tara, I would
Hold it down.
appreciate all the
Thanks, sir.
pictures in chat today of your adventure. That was pretty awesome, especially that gigantic
Thanks.
ship.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend to keep my mind busy, and
Cheers, Brian.
we had a
Thank you.
good weekend kicking around the back roads of Michigan, all the way up to Mackinac to the UP.
First time?
We checked out some dispos, and it was a great weekend. Trying to make the best of it up here in the snow.
Oh yeah,
That's
might
it.
as well.
Yeah.
What else is there to do?
Yeah,
Just
it was
warm.
awesome.
Cheers, Brian. 420.
Cheers, everybody. Missed everybody in chat. I can't get my crap to work, so I miss everybody in chat. Cheers.
Cheers, cheers.
Is there going to be a wake and bake with the Groskis on Saturday?
No.
Negative.
I don't know. I mean,
If there is, I can't make it because I'm going to be out of town.
Negative.
okay, well, there you go. So we're probably going to have to skip next weekend.
Baked could probably host it if you pulled it.
Yeah, I can host it.
Ooh, do you have
I'm
your
off.
cardboard cutout yet?
Oh yeah,
I'm
you
off.
don't
All
know.
right.
I need to
Oh,
order
yeah,
that.
there we go.
Baked has done it before.
Yeah, I can do
Make
it.
your name right.
So as long as we have enough people, we'll do it.
Make sure you
Okay,
bring your
we'll have to
stick
see.
shooters.
I think I
Everybody
need to
bring
make
your-
a trip home to Cincinnati next weekend, so
You do.
we'll have to
You
see
do.
about me.
We'll see.
You do have to make a run.
Hook me up with some 190.
Oh, I do need to make a run.
Go get that Goya, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Spartan needs some
The
RSO
Goyetta? What is it?
juice,
Yeah.
whatever
Oh,
it is.
okay. Well, then I definitely have to make a run then if I
Yeah.
need to hook up Spartan and Skillbow.
Yeah, man.
Yep.
Pew pew pew.
Oh,
Hit the music
nice.
sequence.
That
Let's
was
get the hell out of
good.
here,
That
man.
was
That's been a good one.
Pretty good. Oh, some Smith and Wessons, I see.
We need a video to add to this one.
420. I didn't know that till just now. That was awesome. Thank you.
Just a little song to play
We
us
need some
out.
rolling credits.
Gonna mess with that this week, probably.
Yeah, man.